Hey, it's Kevin Lawton with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. And on today's episode, I am going to be joined by Ryan Kirklewski, who is the Director of Software Product Management at Dematic. And we're going to talk a little bit about Dematic and their software division specifically. And I think, most people, when they think of Dematic, maybe they don't think of software right away traditionally. So we're going to talk a little bit about that shift and what they're kind of working on. And we're also going to talk about the landscape of the industry as well when it comes to solution providers and how they're starting to try and diversify their offerings and what's really causing that and what does that mean for you, the customer, as well. So, Ryan, welcome to the show. How are you?
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. Appreciate you having me.
Definitely happy to get you on. Happy to talk to you about this. I think it's a very interesting topic that we're going to dive into here, and definitely interested to learn more about what Dematic's doing on the software side as well. For people that are not familiar, why don't you kind of start us off here? Give us a brief overview of Dematic itself and what Dematic's involved in, and then also tell us a little bit about kind of your side of the business too, the software division.
Yeah, sure. So, Dematic, probably pretty fairly well known within the industry. We are a provider of warehouse automation and optimization solutions. Most people probably, run into us when it comes to things like ASRS solutions, Dematic multi-shuttles, conveyors, sorters. Certainly, what we're probably best known for here at Dematic. We have a global footprint with employees and customers all over the globe. We work with, everything from really highly automated, complex facilities and operations to customers that are still on an automation journey and kind of growing along that automation maturity journey, if you will. I work on the software side at Dematic. My background's in supply chain software, and even kind of being in this industry prior to joining Dematic, wasn't as familiar myself with the software side of Dematic's business. So it's been great to be here. I've been here about 2.5 years to be able to kind of learn this side of Dematic's business and then kind of bring my perspective into it. So I work within software product management here at Dematic. My focus is on, you can call it kind of the warehouse execution software, but not just WES, but WMS, WCS, both in, kind of managing the applications we have today and setting the strategy for where we're going from a software standpoint, making sure that aligns to our company leadership's goals and objectives, and that we're continuing to position Dematic as a leader in this market going forward, a thought leader, and how do we even not just like to revolutionize our business, but the industry here with the solutions we're putting forward. So my job is really to bring that software perspective, bring software to the front of the types of solutions that Dematic offers, and really to rethink how software is used both within Dematic solutions and just in the industry as a whole.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, and I think it's really interesting to see that too. And I've worked in an operation before where we had a Dematic multi-shuttle system, right?
Mhm.
And so very interesting to hear kind of the diversity of those offerings. And we're going to talk a little bit more about some of that software too, and what you're working on there a little later in the conversation here. But kind of want to dive into and get your kind of, I guess, temperature in a sense on the solution provider world right now in the industry because you guys are a solution provider, right?
Mhm.
You do many different types of things, as you just mentioned, from the physical aspect and then also from a software aspect too as well. But I'm curious. I mean, how do you see the industry evolving as it pertains to solution providers and kind of what they're now bringing to the market? What do you think is kind of going on right now?
Sure. I've often kind of seen the industry, solution providers in the industry in kind of three categories, right? There's
Mhm.
the material handling providers. Dematic certainly fits into that category. There's the kind of pure play software providers like your traditional WMS providers, Blue Yonder, Manhattan, companies like that. And then you've got kind of these next gen tech providers. That it's a little bit more of a broader bucket, right? You've got everything from robotics companies to companies that do just software, but maybe just real niche software. Maybe
Mhm.
purely just optimization or control tower type software, and that's a that's where all the innovation tends to happen. Is kind of in that next gen category, and so everyone's kind of got their place in this market. But I think what you've seen over the last several years really is these companies starting to figure out how do they grow their kind of their share of the pie, and by doing so they've all started to kind of encroach on each other's spaces, right? So you see material handling vendors investing in software, you see uh, software providers starting to figure out how do they get, they're not going to produce material handling, but how do they creep into that automation space, or how do they look to innovate in things like AI or optimization? And then you see these companies that are doing robotics, or AMR providers, for example, or just other companies that started with real niche kind of software point solutions. How do they expand their footprint? Right? Everyone wants to grow their business, so
Mm,
you do that by moving into the other areas, right? And so it started to kind of jumble up. I feel like the
mm.
solution provider space here, and I think it's led to a lot of great innovation. Within within this space, you see a lot of investment right now coming into the supply chain solution market. You walk obviously the floor at Modex or ProMat or any of that, right? You're just
Oh yeah.
bombarded with solutions, right? And to the point that it can be overwhelming, which is kind of the flip side of that equation, right? Is there's so many things out there, and it can be hard as a company looking at solution providers to really understand what's real, right? You walk these show floors and you hear a lot of buzzwords, AI, ML, big data, whatever, pick a buzzword and you'll hear it. It's how you drive people into your booths at these shows.
Yeah.
But it can be really hard to then understand how do you use these technologies, what technologies are real. At the end of the day, our customers are trying to optimize their picking, packing, and shipping, right? How do they optimize their distribution? How do they turn a cost center into at least, if not a profit center, not a loss leader,
Hmm.
and a differentiator and a value driver for their business. So you're certainly starting to see some convergence in this space. And I think what you're also starting to see is a focus really on software, right? Whether obviously if you're a software company like a Manhattan, right, that's always been your core business.
Yeah.
But when you're talking to material handling providers or AMR providers or really almost any solution provider these days in this space, it's all about software, and they're talking about how they can drive value through the software. At some level, the hardware becomes commoditized, right? I mean, how many AMR vendors are in this space right now? There's
Yeah.
tons,
A
and they're
lot.
constantly changing. It feels like, and when someone creates something brand new, like in any industry, right? There's copycats, and then everyone tries to kind of take that. Um, and just they try to outdo each other, but you got to also do it in a cost effective way. And so everyone's looking for how did they really differentiate and drive value now if the hardware and even at some level parts of the software have been become commoditized, and they do that through software, right? How do I drive value through things like AI driven optimization, better insight into my operation for better decision support, or eventually autonomous decision making by my system. How do I avoid exceptions in my operation versus having to deal with them to begin with? And I think that's where you're starting to see a lot of providers start to focus on, is how software drives that value.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And I've heard that a few times, about I mean, essentially this, whether it's automation, whether it's robotics, whether it's, as simple as a RF scanner, right? I mean, it's hardware in a sense, and what really drives it. Yes, there's some design nuances and things like that, but the software really is what's powering it, making it smarter, making it more capable to do certain things. And I think it's very interesting to see that, where I think a while ago you wouldn't necessarily see all that kind of convergence as you mentioned there.
Right.
And I think it's interesting too, to see people that, because like one company I spoke with over the last year, and they're traditionally like started in racking, right? And then from
Yeah.
racking, they're like, oh, let's do some automation. From automation, they're like, well, how do we do software too, and offer software, and become this full on integrator, and even to the extent to at some point saying like, well, we need to start offering forklifts too, because forklift companies are now offering racking, right? It's like,
Right. Yep.
so there's this mix, right, in this kind of broad spectrum of offerings that people are trying to get out there. So, I guess from a customer perspective, what does that mean for the customer? Because is there, I think you can look at it in two ways essentially, right? I mean, you have the opportunity now where a customer maybe can not necessarily one stop shop, maybe in some cases, right? But
Mhm.
they can get that, but then also maybe there's some risk there where solution providers are just trying to jump on something quickly and don't necessarily have the best offering there could be. But what's your view? I mean, how does that start to impact the customer? I mean, both on the positive and negative side there.
Yeah, I mean it's great for the customer from the standpoint that there's more available to them in terms of solutions, right? The innovation that you're seeing in this space, I think, is great. Short term and especially long term, because you'll see that innovation continue to mature and grow. And so, from a customer standpoint, if you're in the supply chain space right now, there's just a ton of different solutions available to you, which is also can be a negative too, right? When you've got so many solutions that are available to you, and then you've got to try to kind of piece all together, right? What solutions do I really need? What solutions do I need from different vendors potentially, and how do you make them work together? If I'm working with three different vendors on three different solutions that together make up what's supporting my operation, how
Mm,
how do I do integration? Does the integration work? What about a data strategy? If I want to ever use AI, I need to have really good solid data, and I need to have a good data strategy. And if I'm using different systems, do I have a unified set of data that I can use for training AI models and things like that? So there's certainly challenges there. I think you kind of alluded to it as well. There's companies that you know have traditionally done a certain thing and then start to move into another area.
mm,
How good are they going to be at that area, right? I mean, not every company is the best at everything. Certainly, companies can be good at multiple things, and certain companies are really good at kind of bringing other solutions to bear as a systems integrator, and you know integrating them into a kind of a common solution set for a customer. So if you're a customer in this market, not only do you have to think about what types of solutions do I need, you then got to think about what type of vendors do I want to work with, and a lot of this comes down to trust, obviously, right? When being in the space and working in professional services prior to joining Dematic, it's all about building trust, right? And if you can trust that
mm,
the vendor you're working with both has the expertise to do what they're going to say they can do, has that knowledge, but also has a track record of delivering solutions over an extended period of time, and understands your business. Right, at the end of the day, it's about having that knowledge to be able to provide a solution that's going to support a customer's business. Every customer, certainly that we have, and every customer that any provider has is unique in some regard, right? Yes, they're all in supply chain and distribution, but we've all got, every company has a nuance to it. It's how we create competitive advantage. This is not a cookie cutter industry, company to
mm,
company. And so you got to be able to bring together that knowledge, that experience, that understanding of these solutions and how they work together, um, really to provide an effective solution, for your customers. So I think, for customers, it's great, right? Obviously, you've got all this available to you, all this technology and innovation, and you'll continue to have more of it going forward, because I don't see this, tech innovation revolution within supply chain slowing down anytime soon.
mm.
But it can be difficult to figure out how to use it. It feels overwhelming. And like I said, having a company that you can work with that understands all these technologies can bring it all together, I think, is essential to success.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great point there too, because it is, you mentioned earlier, you go to like Modex or ProMat and you're surrounded by
Mm.
solutions everywhere you look, right? And it's can certainly be overwhelming. I mean, the innovation is great, right? But all that innovation and whether it's people that have been in the industry for a long time, like yourselves, Dematic, or it's startups, right, that are trying to bring innovation into. It's great for the industry overall, but for someone that's trying to decide and determine which is the right one for them,
Yeah.
it's certainly it's a little option decision fatigue, I guess, right? In a sense where it's just like overwhelming and very, very saturated, I guess, in that sense. But very interesting perspectives there, and really interesting to hear about how that kind of shift is happening. And I think it's interesting to see too how that'll continue to evolve and how customers will utilize that and leverage that to their advantage in some sense. So I'm curious. I mean, from a Dematic's perspective, you're on the software side, right? And as we kind of said in the beginning, when people think of Dematic, they don't necessarily first thing think of software, right? So tell us, I guess, on the software side of Dematic, what are you developing, and what are you guys working on, and what's the concentration on software? How is that kind of coming to the market?
Yeah, sure. So, Dematic is, kind of right there in the middle of all this with, trying to kind of rethink, from a software standpoint, how we bring solutions to market. We have internally a, wide portfolio of, WMS, WES, WCS solutions, as well as, asset management and analytics tools as well. Um, you know, Tools that you would use when you're running a lot of automation in a facility, to make sure that both they're they're integrated and running, but that they're running well,
Yeah.
and that you can keep them up and running. From a software standpoint, what our focus really is on now is how we move our software portfolio into the next generation. Really, what that means is, you talk about WMS, WES, WCS, and
Hmm.
these names we give these different sets of capabilities.
Yeah.
And my perspective is that removing those kind of those names, those artificial names that we kind of give these things, and bringing together these combinations of capabilities that traditionally would be known as WCS, WES, and WMS is essential, because companies, as I mentioned before, every company is a little different in what they need, right? Where they are in their automation journey, where they are in their maturity journey, what type of solution they need today is not necessarily the solution they're going to need 3 years, 5 years, 10 years from now.
Mm.
And the challenge traditionally with software has been it's not as adaptable in this space, not as adaptable as it needs to be to keep up with the really ever changing needs of our customers and companies in this space. And so what we're working on now is a new platform, new software platform that isn't about it's a WMS, it's a WES, it's a WCS, but brings together all those capabilities in a way that allows us to deploy the solution that each of our customers needs kind of uniquely to them. So if a customer needs a full-blown, traditional WMS solution, those capabilities are there. If what they really need is kind of a WES type solution that integrates to another WMS and runs automation and integrates through WCS, we
Mm.
can provide that. But provide the capabilities just that the customer needs, a footprint reflective of the customer's needs, so you don't have to install a behemoth system that you only use a certain percentage of. And at some level, those capabilities, are somewhat commoditized, right? WES, MS, and CS type capabilities have been around decades, right? So it, used to be, there was almost an arms race, if you will, of features for these companies of, who can put out the next new set of great WMS features. Well, at this point, they all kind of do the same thing, right? They do them maybe in
Yeah.
various ways and different levels of configuration available to them and whatnot, but you have to have those capabilities. You have to be able to kind of provide those traditional W star S capabilities, if you will, to be a player in the space. Where the differentiation occurs is in how we enable those capabilities for our customers, both in terms of adaptability of solution
Mhm.
and intelligence of the solution. So, from an adaptability standpoint, you're talking about things like configurability of workflows. You're talking about simplifying the integration of software to software systems and software to hardware systems. That integration is often a long pole in the tent when it comes to project work, and is often very custom, fraught with risk, and hard to support long term. And so you see companies like, say, an SVT trying to solve just that
Mhm.
problem. And there's a reason why that problem needs to be solved, is because integration is a tricky thing. So configuration, integration, and then you hear a lot about, another buzzword being composability, composable architecture, and really what that comes down to is how do you go from the traditional way of having to install a monolithic solution that a customer may only use 20% of, and then you're paying for that whole footprint versus
Mm,
just deploying the parts of a solution that a customer needs and then being able to deploy other parts as the needs change so that customers, especially as you move into like a cloud, type environment where you're paying for cloud footprint, um, you know, just pay for the size solution you need. So that's part of it. How do you enable a customer to quickly deploy, quickly configure and integrate, and quickly get up and running a system so that you're cutting down on your time to value, your implementation timelines, your implementation costs. And then the other part of that is the intelligence, right? How do you
mm,
leverage data, whether that be through artificial intelligence and machine learning or just advanced data analytics and algorithms to be able to actually now drive some real operational value in the throughout a customer's distribution site and a distribution network. So we're talking about things like I said before, proactive decision support to be able to get ahead of exception scenarios before they occur. And if exception scenarios do occur, how do we help our customers quickly identify and get to a resolution of how to solve for those types of
mm,
exception scenarios that happen? And beyond that, how do we get the system itself to become more intelligent over time so that as exception scenarios occur or decisions have to be made in an operation, the system is able to use data and use different inputs to make decisions that don't always need a user input. So when you've got scenarios like stockouts, or you've got an unexpected change in your available labor, or a piece of your machinery goes down, or there's a sudden spike in demand of an item that you just weren't prepared for, and these things happen all the time in
yeah,
operations, and it today requires somebody to constantly be, or some people to constantly be making decisions
right.
about what needs to be done, and that's been the traditional way. And if the system can become more intelligent and learn over time what to do in these situations, what happens when I have an AMR that that goes down suddenly, or one of my conveyors stops working, or suddenly I have a bunch of inventory I thought I had but I don't, and now I have
Mm,
demand for it. What do I do? And so it's really about the intelligence, helping our customers make better decisions, right? We don't want them to get stuck in the minutia of, well, what orders do I need to allocate in which wave and release at what time, and like that.
mm,
That just needs to happen, right? And that just needs to be done. We want to use the human capital that we have in the warehouses to solve the decisions that humans need to solve, and not get hung up on managing, having to micromanage the
yeah,
operation. That's why you have a system, right? And I've seen in
mm,
the in years past where people pay to put in systems and they end up having to hire more people just to run the system. So you now increased your labor
yeah,
just to run a
yeah,
system that was supposed to make your operation more efficient and easier to operate. So adaptability and intelligence, I think, are where you drive value
mm,
these days. Again, it's you got to have the features, you got to have the capabilities, you got to be able to receive, put away, pick, pack, ship, and everything in between. If that's just the price of admission at this point. But if you really want to drive value for customers, you need to make their life easier, right? And you need to
mm.
make the operation more efficient, um, in a way that doesn't bog them down with having to make a million decisions every day.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's such an interesting point there because I've heard similar situations too where, companies do, whether it's some type of solution system or otherwise, it's supposed to make things easier, right? More
Yeah,
efficient, it's supposed to save cost at the
right.
end of the day. And then, like you said, you end up adding additional people just to make it run and make it happen. And I think, it's such the backwards way I think of going about it, right? In a sense. And that's obviously not the expected outcome when you do something like that. So I think, seeing that technology that you're talking about being able to start to make decisions on its own, I think frees up in operation to focus on executing, right? And not worrying about that. And oftentimes too, when you see, if there needs to be some manual intervention or some decision making happen, sometimes it's by the time you either recognize that or are able to get the data and make an informed decision, you're depending on your decision making process, sometimes it's like, well, I can't make the decision, so now I got to wait for this other person to make the
Right.
decision, and then we got to wait for the other person to make the decision, and then it's got to come all the way back down. By the time you do that, like you've missed the opportunity to avoid a real disruption, right?
Exactly.
And when you talk about disruption in especially in a warehouse fulfillment environment, high volume, you're setting yourself behind pretty quickly there, depending on how many units you're moving through. Just a couple hours can be a pretty big impact. So, I think it's very interesting that you point that out. So now tell us a little bit about this software that you're putting together, and you mentioned, so it's a combination of bringing the WMS, WES, WCS together, right? We love our acronyms, right, and our
We
system
do.
names. So I mean, do you guys have a name for this, or what do you call it?
Yeah, internally we kind of refer the acronym. I mentioned it before, right? This W star S, right? So to kind of
Star S. Okay.
remove the middle letter, I guess, right? Because and I, I think I'm stealing this from somebody else that I read at one point, but they said that those terms, W, M, S, E, S, and CS, they're just marketing terms, right? And
Yeah.
and I read that and I just was like, it just hit me like a ton of bricks, right? I mean, you know, I
Yeah.
I came up in this industry through the WMS world, right? And I remember seeing WES for the first time, or what a customer called WES, and they were showing me what it's doing, rocking the site. I'm thinking to myself, the WMS already does all this, right? Like, so it's what's the difference?
Yeah.
And when I had read that statement that these are just marketing terms, it was a little bit of a light bulb moment for me that we put these barriers up for ourselves somewhat artificially to
Hmm.
say, oh, you need the WMS solution, or you need the WES solution. I look at it as you need the solution. You need the solution that's going to run your operation, whatever you want to call it. And your operation may be a very manual one that has some, people walking around with, pallet jacks and RF guns, or you may have a really highly automated facility with AMRs and multi shuttles and conveyors and sorters and some manual things going on and a lot to coordinate, or anywhere in between, right? Where most of these companies reside. And what you need will vary based on that. But we also know that this industry is real dynamic. The
Hmm.
the needs of these companies to serve their customers change, especially if you're working, with if you're in e-commerce or any kind of retail or retail adjacent environment. That retail customers, which all of us are, right, have very high expectations these days,
Yeah.
and those expectations are always changing, and I would say
Yeah.
always becoming more difficult for companies to meet. And so they're constantly looking at how do I improve my operation? What is available to me, either from a technology standpoint or just a process standpoint, to be able to meet that need? And so, to me, it's about having capabilities that will support
Mhm.
whatever is needed. Do you need AMRs? Do you just need to change the way in which your manual pickers do their job so that they can be more efficient? Do you need intelligence to figure out, you know, on a more dynamic basis, what orders should release when? What inventory do you need in what facility? Do you need to move facility from an East Coast DC to more of a Midwest DC because
Mhm.
you're going to have a demand in that region and you want to get it closer to your end customer? And so you need to be able to solve these challenges, answer these questions that the people who run these facilities every day are trying to solve for, and they're,
Mhm.
sometimes they have the data to solve those or to make those decisions, and sometimes they don't, or they're going off gut feel, or they're reacting. And so, yeah, so from a name standpoint, I guess right now we would refer to it as kind of W star S. I think we'll work
Okay.
to have a better name long term, and what that all means. But again, it's almost, not having a name is almost kind of part of the point, in a sense, right? Where it's like, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter what we want to call it, right? What I'd like for someone to be able to do is say, when they think about, Dematic's software solution or Dematic software platform, they recognize it as whatever my operation is today. it
Mm,
supports that because it's got all those capabilities, and it's got the ability to put together the right features that I need to support this operation today. And I know that when my operation will change, because it will, maybe we just don't know exactly when it will change, that same software solution, that same software platform will have those capabilities I need when I need them, and we can turn those on and off. We can integrate AMRs if we need to. We can,
mm.
you know, what we can run multi-site. We can run distributed order management type capabilities. Whatever the need is, we have those capabilities. Um, and so that's to me really what this is all about is having that
Mm.
confidence in a solution to solve the problem today, but then to be able to grow right with the customer at the same time. So um, that's really what it's about. How do we
Yeah.
allow for adaptability, and how do we allow for intelligence? Those are the two words I often go back to when I talk about kind of what our driving themes should be, or the driving force should be behind this type of a solution.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that too. I mean, I think that it is like, who cares what the name is, right? I mean, as long as it solves the problem. I mean, maybe you could be so bold to call it just like your solution, basically, like
Mhm.
straight up, like this is gonna solve whatever you have going on. And
Dematic
I think that
software.
makes total sense, right?
Yeah.
But names aside, right? I think we want to touch on too here that you guys were named to Gartner's Magic Quadrant for warehouse management systems for the first time ever, right? So tell us a little bit about what does that mean, and how does that kind of help you guys make a mark here on the software side.
Yeah. So I guess it was, yeah, this year's Gartner Magic Quadrant. Dematic was included for the first time. It was the first year that we had actually gone through the process of
Mm,
going through that review process with Gartner. So um, it was great. We were very excited to be included in that, and I think what that represents is a couple things, right? A validation of the capabilities that we have today in our software, and the kind of just the validation of the solutions we provided to our customers to date, right? Something the Magic Quadrant is looking at what you have to offer the customer today, right, and what you've delivered over
mm,
the last, however long they look back. And so it's certainly a validation that our capabilities internally are right up there, with other industry leaders, right? And we mentioned earlier, Dematic, often not known as being a software or a company with software, right? I mean, we offer mechatronic solutions. That's a really important part of our business, but the software, I believe, is what's really going to propel us forward and allow us to continue to be, a dominant leader in the space. And so, to me, the Magic Quadrant was a way for us to kind of just put a plant a flag, or put our mark out there and say, like, yeah, no, we're here to play in the software space, and we're not
mm,
starting from scratch. We have a long legacy and long history of delivering software solutions, and so that's great. That's somewhat validation of how we've got to here, and it's certainly a it speaks to all the work that countless people within Dematic over
mm,
a long time have worked on to build these solutions. And so it's a great kudos to them and the work that they've done. Now our job is to say, this is how, we're here today. How do we want to continue to position ourselves as a leader in the space going forward, and kind of live up to that reputation, right? So certainly we share, with analysts, and that our vision for our software, where we're going, in terms of this kind of, combined W star S solution platform, and why we're doing it. More importantly, the problems we're trying to solve for, and how we're trying to really push the industry forward, for our customers, for the rest of the market. I think oftentimes a lot of customers may look at a Dematic and say, well, if I don't need a gigantic automation solution, Dematic may not be the company that I should be talking to. And I think that's couldn't be further from the truth. Right. I
mm.
think from a Dematic standpoint, yes, we do implement in very complex, highly automated sites, but that's not all the sites that we do. It's the ones that, get the kind of get the eyeballs, if you will, and get the press. And um, but our experience, our knowledge of how to optimize, how to solve these complex challenges in warehouses, which exist both in highly automated sites and in less automated sites,
Yeah.
that experience that we have, that I think the Magic Quadrant kind of validates, that we've been able to, put into the software we build allows us to now propel that solution set forward, adding in things like adaptability, adding in AI driven intelligence, and these things that will now kind of drive to the next generation of warehousing. And so for me, I look at the Magic Quadrant as great validation of what Dematic has done to date, and almost motivation or a mandate now for us to say we want to continue to
Mhm.
be a leader in this space. We need to evolve our thinking, and just like any space, but certainly any space like this that has a lot of innovation in it, if you're not pushing the ball forward
Yeah.
within your own company, you will be left behind. And so this is our opportunity now to kind of reset the narrative around who is Dematic and not change who we are, right? We're not going to get rid
Mhm.
of automation solutions and that. We're going to expand who we are. We're going to evolve who we are. And we're going to be able to, I believe, better serve our customers in the market because of it.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. And congratulations to you guys, of
Yeah.
course, for that placement. And, I love what you're saying there. And I mean, I think it makes sense that, like you said there, you got to keep pushing the ball forward, right? I mean, even if you have the most innovative solution out there right now, that doesn't mean, a year from now, you're going to be in the same spot, right? So you
Right.
have to continue to develop and evolve and, be able to meet those end user and customers needs who at the end of the day are trying to do the same thing. They're trying to serve their customer as well. So, I think it's a great thing that the way you're looking at it and the perspective you have on it. So very interesting to talk to you today here, Ryan, and learn about what Dematic is doing on the software side and get your perspective on the solution provider market too as well and how that's evolving over time as well. So if people are interested in learning more about Dematic and maybe specifically finding out more about the software side of things, what you're working on, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, certainly you can go to our website, Dematic.com. It's got a lot of great information both about our automation mechanized solutions and as well as our software. People can feel free to reach out to me directly if they're interested in learning more or just connecting. You can find me on LinkedIn. But yeah, this is a topic I could talk about a long time. So happy to talk with anyone
Yeah.
who'd like to kind of learn more about it or just kind of talk through kind of where this industry is going. It's a great time to be in this if you're a technologist and someone who likes to see how technology innovates. So yeah, I think it'll be really interesting to see where this industry goes, especially in the next 5, 10, 15 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And 5 years from now, maybe we'll be checking in with you to see what the next 5 years will be looking
We'll
like.
have a
So
name. We'll have a name for you, a new acronym that we can use at that point.
yeah, in 5 years, yeah, yeah, definitely. All right, sounds good. So Ryan, appreciate you once again coming on the show today, and we will definitely put those links for everybody at thenewwarehouse.com as well as in the show notes here too. So thank you once again, Ryan, for your time today.
Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate it.
Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning into today's video here on our YouTube channel, The New Warehouse Podcast, and I appreciate you tuning in. If you liked what you saw, make sure you subscribe to our channel, and if you like this video in particular, make sure you like it as well. And if you want to get this great t-shirt that you see in the video behind me, Warehouses Are Sexy, head to warehousesaresexy.com and get your own.